The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with light, sound, and movement. Hundreds of voices echoed against the high crystal walls. Delegates from every known world sat in curved rows that spread upward like the tiers of an ancient theater. Bright banners of their home systems glowed above them, colors shifting in the air like living paint. It was meant to be a place of reason, of diplomacy, of order. On this day, however, it was more like a marketplace, full of laughter and sharp remarks. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform, stood the High Speaker. The speaker's tall frame shone under the light, skin patterned with silver lines that marked his rank. His voice carried across the hall, calm and steady, though the delegates were anything but calm. He raised a staff to bring order. The sound of its strike echoed like thunder and the voices lowered, though amusement still flickered across the faces of many species. "The matter before us," said the speaker, "is the continuation of the ban placed upon the species known as humans. This is no trivial matter. The archives speak of events that should not be ignored. Today, we decide if the ban will remain." At once, the hall erupted again. Delegates spoke over one another, some raising their arms, others shaking their heads. It was clear that many of them found the subject absurd. A scaled delegate from the Krez Dominion leaned forward, his voice sharp with mockery. "Why keep such a rule? Humans are frail. Their bodies wither in decades. Their ships are weak compared to ours. Why treat them as a threat?" A ripple of agreement ran through the seats. Another delegate, with long transparent skin that showed the glow of inner veins, laughed openly. Perhaps they were banned for their clumsy nature. Perhaps the galaxy simply grew tired of cleaning up their accidents. The chamber filled with more laughter. Some struck their desks in amusement, others whispered jokes to their neighbors. To them, the idea that humans could be dangerous was not only false but worthy of ridicule. But not every delegate joined the laughter. A small figure sat quietly in one of the lower rows, his posture straight while others leaned back in mirth. His name was Rin, a delegate from a neutral world that rarely drew attention. Rin's eyes were steady, fixed on the speaker. He did not smile. Instead, he felt a slow unease spreading through him as he listened to the words around him. The speaker struck his staff again, but even that sound took longer to bring silence this time. "You may laugh," the speaker said, his voice harder now, "but this council does not place bans without reason. The matter of humans is not comedy. It is survival." Still, whispers passed between rows. A tall delegate with wings folded behind his back rose from his seat. "With respect, Speaker, these claims are exaggerated. If humans were so fearsome, where are they now? Their numbers are small. Their worlds are scattered. They lack the reach of the great powers. If there is any danger, it is from stronger empires, not them." Many nodded in agreement, the earlier laughter giving way to smug certainty. To most of them, humans were forgotten wanderers, a minor species with little weight in the balance of the galaxy. The very idea of them being banned seemed a relic of some old political maneuver. Rin finally rose. His voice was not loud, but the tone carried with it a sharp clarity that cut through the noise. "Do not mistake silence for weakness," he said. "Do not mistake absence for defeat. Humans have not been erased. They are not shadows. They are watching, learning, waiting. There is a reason this ban was made. We should not forget it." The chamber did not grow silent. Instead, the reaction was louder than before. Some jeered, others laughed openly at the small delegate daring to defend such a species. "You sound like a human yourself," one shouted. Another added, "Perhaps your world fears ghosts. The rest of us do not." Rin sat again, his words swallowed by the storm of voices. Yet he did not look defeated. His gaze remained firm, as if he knew something the others did not. The High Speaker did not laugh, did not join the jeers. His eyes were fixed on the crowd, and there was something old and tired in his face. "If you wish for proof," he said, "then proof you shall have. The archives hold the truth of humans, a truth that many of you have chosen to forget. Perhaps it is time you remembered." At that, the chamber grew quieter. Curiosity had replaced amusement, though doubt still filled the air. Delegates exchanged glances, their expressions somewhere between interest and disbelief. For them, this was still a story, still a claim, still something distant from reality. But the speaker's voice had shifted, and it carried weight that pressed upon every ear. "Let the records be opened. Let the galaxy remember why humans are not to be taken lightly." The laughter faded at last, replaced by a silence that stretched across the chamber. None of them yet understood what they were about to see. None of them were prepared for the truth. After the high speaker's words, the chamber remained unusually quiet. Delegates shifted in their seats, some curious, some skeptical. The ban on humans had always been a topic they dismissed with amusement, but now the mention of proof drew their attention. Eyes flicked toward the archive's entrance, a massive portal that led to the recorded history of countless worlds. Rin, the small delegate who had spoken before, leaned forward slightly. He could feel the weight of the council's attention on him, though most were not aware. Few had expected anyone to defend humans, and even fewer had expected the words to carry a sense of truth that could not be ignored. A tall delegate from the Archon cluster stood suddenly, his voice smooth and commanding. "Why waste time with what we already know to be weak? Let us move on to pressing matters. The humans are not present. They do not lead fleets. They do not command alliances. What danger could they possibly pose now?" Ren listened quietly. He had expected this reaction. Many species had grown comfortable in their arrogance, believing themselves stronger, smarter, and faster than humans. Yet he knew the danger of underestimating a species that refused to be defeated. "I understand your doubts," Ren said, rising again, his tone calm but firm. "You speak of size and fleets and alliances. You measure power by what is easy to count. Strength is not only in numbers. Strength is in choice. In courage. In the refusal to surrender when every path seems impossible. Humans have that strength, and that is why the ban exists." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some leaned closer, curious despite themselves. A few shook their heads in disbelief. "Do not indulge fairy tales," one delegate hissed. "We deal with facts, not stories from old reports." Ren's eyes did not falter. "The facts are in the archives. Records of battles, of choices, of sacrifice. Humans are not perfect. They are not the fastest. They are not the largest. Yet they endure. They adapt. They survive when others would fall. That is what you will see if you watch the evidence." The high speaker nodded slowly. "Ren speaks with truth. The archives will show the council the events that cannot be ignored. The council must witness what humans are capable of before judgment or dismissal." A heavy silence followed. Delegates looked toward the massive portal again, where the archivists were preparing the records. It was a slow process, each file carefully decrypted and transmitted to the chamber's hollow projectors. No one spoke, for the first time in weeks, as anticipation filled the air. The doors of the chamber slid open, and a team of archivists entered, moving with careful precision. They carried cylindrical containers of compressed data, each humming with energy. The delegates watched as the containers connected to the main hollow projector, wires stretching across the floor like veins of light. Ren did not sit. He remained standing, hands clasped lightly in front of him. He remembered the stories he had read as a child on his home world, tales of humans who stood against impossible odds, who faced enemies far stronger and refused to yield. He had studied these records for years, learning from them, understanding why the council feared humans enough to create a ban. A soft hum filled the chamber as the projector powered up. Light spread across the walls, casting moving images of distant worlds. Delegates leaned forward, their curiosity now fully captured. Some tried to hide it behind polite expressions, but the air was thick with tension. One delegate from the Voron sector whispered to another, "What could humans possibly have done to warrant this? Their stories are so small, so limited." Ren's gaze swept across the room. "That is exactly what makes them dangerous," he said quietly, though loud enough for a few to hear. "Limited in number, limited in resources, yet unlimited in determination. When humans are tested, they do not fall. They fight. They endure. They learn faster than anyone can predict. That is why they are banned. That is why no one should underestimate them." The archivists finished setting up the projector. The high speaker raised a hand, signaling the chamber to prepare for the first record. The delegates shifted in their seats, some uneasy, some skeptical, some eager to see if these humans were as weak as they believed. Ren remained calm, his heart steady. He knew what the council was about to witness would silence the mockery. For centuries, humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and ridiculed. But their actions had left a mark in history, a mark the galaxy could not ignore. The chamber's lighting dimmed, and a quiet settled over the room. The hum of the projector filled the air as the first images prepared to play. The delegates stared, leaning forward, waiting. Even those who had laughed at the ban could feel the weight of the moment. Ren allowed himself a small smile. This was only the beginning. The world would see humans as he had known them, not as fragile or foolish, but as relentless, clever, and unstoppable. The first images flickered to life. The chamber was dark now, only the glow from the hollow projector lighting the faces of the delegates. The air was thick with anticipation. Every species present had come expecting either a dull recording or nothing at all. No one was prepared for the story about to unfold. Ren remained standing at the edge of the chamber, his eyes fixed on the projection. He had seen these records before, in the safety of his study on his home world, but witnessing them in the council chamber made the moments sharper, more alive. The first recording began. At first, it was just a landscape. Dust swirled over a barren planet, winds whipping across jagged rock formations. Ships lay scattered across the ground, smoking, some burning. Delegates whispered to each other, thinking this was a battlefield lost long ago. Then the figures appeared. Small shapes among the wreckage, moving quickly despite the chaos. They were humans. Their clothing was simple, worn, but their movements were precise, deliberate. They carried what weapons they could, some scavenged from destroyed vehicles, some built by their own hands. Despite the odds, they did not run. A delegate from the crystalline world of Suro leaned forward, her voice trembling. "They are so few. How can they stand against that?" Another, a thick-scaled warrior from the Drek, snorted. "It is only desperation. They cannot last long. Watch and see them fall." But the humans did not fall. One man was seen pulling a wounded companion from the smoke, shielding him with his own body as a larger enemy approached. Another woman rolled to the side, hurled a makeshift grenade, and created enough chaos for a small group to escape. Each movement was calculated, clever, and fearless. Ren watched quietly. He knew the council would not yet understand the lesson. They would see humans as fragile until the story reached its turning point. The footage shifted to the larger battlefield. Dozens of humans faced hundreds of alien soldiers, creatures with armor that shimmered like liquid metal and weapons far more advanced. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, yet they formed lines, improvised strategies, and refused to retreat. Their eyes showed determination, not fear. The chamber grew silent. Delegates who had whispered before now leaned forward. Some could not hide the unease spreading through them. They had believed humans weak, laughable, and yet here they were, standing firm when any other species might have surrendered immediately. Ren's voice, calm but deliberate, carried to those near him. They adapt. They learn quickly. Even when cornered, they find a way. That is why the ban exists. Not because humans are the largest or strongest, but because they refuse to be defeated. The Sura delegate muttered under her breath, "I have never seen anyone fight like that before." The Drek warrior's jaw tightened. It is unusual, yes, but still, they cannot hold forever. Watch how quickly they will crumble. The recording shifted again. Now the humans were shown defending a small outpost. Alien forces advanced in waves, attempting to breach the barricades. Every attempt was met with human ingenuity. Barricades were reinforced, traps were set, and when an enemy vehicle approached, humans used fire and smoke to confuse it. One young human, barely a teenager by appearance, ran across open ground to cut a control line, risking himself so others could gain advantage. Even as delegates murmured in disbelief, the humans continued to fight. Their losses were real, and some were heavy, yet not one surrendered. Each setback became a lesson, each danger an opportunity. Their courage and cleverness turned hopeless situations into small victories. A few delegates gasped aloud. They were seeing what they had refused to believe. These were not fragile beings, these were creatures that could endure unimaginable pressure, make impossible decisions, and still achieve results others would consider miraculous. Rin's eyes narrowed slightly, knowing that the first record had accomplished its purpose. The council was beginning to understand that humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was not in numbers, technology, or armor, but in spirit, intelligence, and the refusal to yield. The recording faded slowly, showing humans regrouping, tending to their wounded, repairing what they could, and preparing for the next wave. The camera lingered on a human commander, surveying the battlefield with calm eyes. Though exhaustion marked his face, there was no fear. Only resolve. The chamber remained silent. Laughter had vanished completely. The smug expressions that had filled the room before were replaced with confusion, curiosity, and in some cases, fear. Delegates who had mocked the ban now questioned their assumptions. The High Speaker raised his staff once more. This is only the first record. There is more to see. Watch carefully. Humans are not what they seem, and their actions will leave the galaxy with a lesson it cannot ignore. Rin allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. The council had begun to see the truth. They were starting to understand why humans had been banned. They were beginning to realize that underestimating humans was not a mistake they could afford to make. The next recording was prepared, and the chamber waited in tense silence, unsure of what they would witness next. The chamber stayed dark, the only light coming from the hollow projector. Delegates leaned forward, eyes wide with curiosity and tension. The first recording had already shaken their beliefs. Now, the next footage began, and the story of humans became even clearer. This recording showed a human fleet in space. The ships were small, barely able to match the size of the alien armada surrounding them. The aliens outnumbered the humans 10-1, their massive vessels glowing with energy, weapons and shields stronger than anything humans had ever built. From the start, it seemed hopeless. Delegates murmured to each other. "They cannot survive this," said a winged delegate from the Talar system. "It is impossible." Rin watched quietly. He knew the galaxy measured strength by size, firepower, and fleet numbers. Humans measured strength differently. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability defined their power. The humans did not flee. They did not panic. Instead, they moved with precision, each ship following a pattern that seemed almost chaotic to outsiders but was part of a clever plan. Smaller ships acted as decoys, drawing enemy fire away from the larger vessels. Engineers aboard the ships repaired shields and weapons while under attack, their hands steady even as alarms blared. A human commander gave quiet orders, each one simple but effective. Delegates could see on the hollow projector how the humans used the enemy's strength against them. They lured larger ships into narrow asteroid fields, forcing the aliens to slow down and lose formation. Smaller human fighters struck from unexpected angles, disabling engines and taking out key systems with surgical precision. The chamber was silent. Not a single delegate laughed or whispered. The air was thick with disbelief. Some began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. A Drek warrior gritted his teeth. "It is clever," he admitted under his breath. "But cleverness alone cannot save them forever." The camera moved closer, showing a moment that would define the battle. One human ship, badly damaged, drifted in the path of a massive enemy cruiser. Sensors showed it had no shields left and barely any weapons functional. Yet the ship's pilot held his position. With one calculated maneuver, he fired a magnetic pulse at the enemy's engines. The massive cruiser shuddered, slowed, and veered off course. Other human ships took advantage of the moment, striking key points in the alien formation. Rin could feel the room shifting. Eyes widened, hands pressed against desks, wings folded tighter. Delegates who had mocked humans now watched in silence, unsure of what to say. The recording shifted again. A human fleet commander was seen speaking to his crew. Their voices were calm, steady, full of focus. Even when explosions shook the ships, even when fire filled corridors, they did not panic. They encouraged one another, adapted quickly, and pressed forward. A few younger delegates whispered, "I did not know they could do that." Another shook his head slowly. "I underestimated them. I see it now." The humans' movements were not just tactical. They were creative. They used enemy missiles to block each other, setting traps and creating openings. They used small, damaged ships to distract the alien forces while larger, more important vessels struck critical targets. Every loss was planned for, every risk calculated. Their bravery inspired one another, and their persistence allowed them to achieve what seemed impossible. Rin noticed a group of aliens on the holoscreen attempting to board a human ship. They were numerous and armed with superior weapons. The humans did not retreat. They used ingenuity, setting traps and using the ship's environment against the invaders. One human even climbed the hull outside, severing the aliens' control lines while under fire. It was daring, reckless to some, but effective. Delegates shifted uneasily. Many could no longer dismiss what they were seeing as luck or coincidence. Humans were different. They were relentless, clever, and impossible to predict. The recording ended with the human fleet still intact, enemy forces retreating in confusion. The humans had survived an impossible attack and gained the advantage. The chamber remained silent. The delegates could feel the weight of what they had witnessed. The arrogance and laughter that had filled the room earlier were gone. Now, there was respect, and in some cases, fear. The high speaker rose, staff in hand. "You see now why humans are not to be underestimated. They are not strong in the way you measure strength. Their power is in their courage, their intelligence, and their unwillingness to surrender. This is why the ban exists. This is why the galaxy must remember them carefully." Rin allowed himself a quiet smile. The council was finally beginning to understand. They were beginning to see the truth that humans had always known: strength could not always be measured by numbers or weapons. Sometimes, it was the heart, the mind, and the will to fight that mattered most. The chamber stayed quiet for a moment longer. Delegates absorbed what they had seen. Each one knew the next recording would likely shake them even more. The humans were only beginning to show what they could do. The archivists prepared the next file. The chamber held its collective breath. The story of humanity was far from over, and the lessons were only just beginning to sink in. The chamber was completely silent now. The last recording had shown humans facing impossible odds in space, yet still finding ways to survive and fight. The delegates sat in tense anticipation as the archivists began to play the next footage. The glow of the hollow projector revealed a battlefield on a distant world, one scarred by fire and explosions. On the planet's surface, humans moved among wreckage and ruined buildings. The enemy forces were countless, their advanced armor glinting in the smoke. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, yet they did not flee. Civilians, engineers, and soldiers all worked together, turning even ordinary tools into weapons. Every movement was purposeful, every action carefully thought out. A human commander surveyed the battlefield, eyes sharp, mind calculating. "We hold here," he said, voice steady. "We protect what we can, and we do not surrender. Cover the wounded and prepare the barricades. We move as one." Delegates watched in astonishment. These humans were ordinary by appearance, some barely adults, some old and weathered, yet they acted with the discipline of trained generals. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps in narrow alleys and luring enemies into confined spaces where numbers mattered less. One young human woman carried water and supplies to the wounded while dodging blasts from above. She was small, yet her determination shone through every action. She did not stop, even as buildings crumbled around her. Her bravery inspired those around her, giving them strength to continue despite exhaustion and fear. The recording shifted to a larger view. Hundreds of enemy soldiers advanced. Their technology was far superior, and their numbers overwhelming. Many delegates whispered, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "They cannot last," one said. "It is hopeless." But the humans did not falter. A group of engineers dismantled old machinery to build barricades and weapons. Farmers, who had never touched a gun before, now fought bravely to protect their homes. Even children acted as lookouts, warning of incoming danger. Their unity was as remarkable as their courage. The camera focused on a moment of intense conflict. A human soldier ran across an open street to pull a trapped comrade from under debris. Enemy fire rained down, yet he pressed on, using quick thinking to shield both himself and the injured companion. Nearby, others created diversions, drawing enemy forces away and giving the trapped humans a chance to escape. A few delegates began to murmur quietly. They had never seen such coordination under extreme pressure. It was more than skill, it was determination, courage, and the refusal to surrender. The human commander then directed a small team to take a high ridge. From there, they could signal reinforcements and control the battlefield more effectively. It was a dangerous task, and the team moved with precision and bravery. They climbed under fire, set communication devices, and successfully called for support. Every move they made was a lesson in courage and intelligence. The recording showed the turning point. The humans, though few, used traps, clever tactics, and sheer willpower to slow the enemy advance. They sacrificed small groups to save others, creating opportunities where none seemed to exist. Even the enemy commanders appeared frustrated, unable to predict the humans' next move. The chamber was silent. Delegates who had mocked the ban on humans before now sat in awe. They had seen bravery, intelligence, and persistence in its purest form. The humans were not merely surviving, they were shaping the battle through cleverness and courage. Ren remained standing, watching the reactions of the council. He felt a quiet satisfaction. The chamber was beginning to understand what humans had always known: strength was not just in size or technology. It was in heart, mind, and the refusal to give up. The recording ended with humans holding their position, battered but unbroken. Their small victory was enough to inspire awe. The enemy forces began to withdraw, confused and frustrated by the humans' resilience. Even with heavy losses, the humans had not surrendered. They had proven, in action, why the council had feared them enough to place a ban. The High Speaker raised his staff again. "You have seen their courage. You have seen their ingenuity. These are the humans. Not weak, not foolish, but relentless and capable beyond measure." The ban was not placed lightly. It exists because humans are unlike any other species. They fight when others flee, endure when others collapse, and adapt when all seems lost. Delegates exchanged uneasy glances. Some lowered their heads, realizing how wrong they had been. Those who had laughed before now kept silent. Respect had replaced arrogance, and fear began to creep into the minds of even the proudest delegates. Rin allowed himself a small nod. The council was learning. They were beginning to see that humans were not to be dismissed, that their strength came from spirit and mind, and that underestimating them could be a fatal mistake. The archivists prepared the next recording, signaling that the story of humanity was far from over. The chamber held its breath. They were about to see even more of what humans could do, and no one would be able to deny their remarkable nature. The chamber was still. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the soft hum of the hollow projector. Delegates had watched humans fight against impossible odds on land and in space. They had seen courage, ingenuity, and determination that no other species could match. Now, the next recording began, and it would show the humans at their most extraordinary. The scene opened on a human colony under attack. Alien forces had surrounded the settlements, cutting off supply lines and advancing steadily. Homes burned, vehicles lay in ruins, and smoke filled the sky. The humans had no reinforcements, no powerful weapons, and no safe retreat. Most species would have surrendered or fled. Humans did neither. Delegates watched as families, engineers, and soldiers worked together. Civilians carried water and food to those injured. Engineers repaired damaged structures while under fire. Soldiers defended barricades, using whatever they could find. Even children acted as scouts, warning of incoming danger. Every human moved with purpose, courage, and determination. The camera focused on a small group of humans holding the main gate to the settlement. Alien soldiers advanced in waves, heavily armed and confident. The humans were few, and their weapons were simple, yet they stood firm. They improvised traps, used fire and smoke to confuse the attackers, and coordinated their movements as if they were one mind. A young man sprinted across open ground to rescue a wounded companion, dodging blaster fire with quick thinking and skill. A woman set traps along a narrow street, slowing the enemy's advance. Another human climbed onto a damaged building to gain a better vantage point, calling out directions to others below. Every action was daring, calculated, and effective. Delegates whispered to each other. The taller-winged delegate muttered, "How can such small beings do this?" A crystalline delegate shook her head slowly. "It is impossible, yet they endure." The recording shifted to a wider view of the battlefield. Humans were scattered across the settlement, holding key positions while others moved to help the wounded. Their coordination was flawless, their bravery unmatched. They adapted to every new threat, using creativity and quick thinking to turn desperate situations into opportunities. At one point, a group of humans found themselves surrounded. Outnumbered, with no clear escape, they acted together. One human distracted the enemy while others dismantled a fallen vehicle to create a barricade. Another fired from a hidden position, picking off enemies one by one. The aliens advanced, confident they would overwhelm the small group, but the humans did not falter. Their courage and teamwork allowed them to survive where defeat seemed certain. The chamber was silent. No one laughed, no one whispered, no one moved. The arrogance that had filled the room in the past was gone. Every delegate stared at the projector, understanding slowly dawning on them. Humans were unlike any other species they had ever encountered. Ren stood quietly, watching the reactions of the council. He knew the humans' actions would leave a lasting impression. They were witnessing history, a story of bravery, intelligence, and relentless determination. The recording shifted again, showing the humans pushing back the enemy. They used clever traps, coordinated strikes, and their knowledge of the terrain to gain advantage. Despite exhaustion, injury, and overwhelming numbers, they refused to yield. Each small victory inspired the next, and slowly the tide began to turn. A Drek warrior muttered under his breath, "They are incredible." I have never seen anything like this. A few younger delegates nodded silently. Even those who had once mocked humans now kept quiet, realizing how wrong they had been. The final scene showed the humans standing together as the enemy retreated. They had lost much, but they had not surrendered. Their determination and courage had allowed them to survive, protect one another, and achieve what no one thought possible. The High Speaker raised his staff, and his voice echoed through the chamber. You have seen it with your own eyes. This is why humans are not to be underestimated. They fight when others would flee. They endure when others would collapse. They adapt when all seems lost. The ban was placed not because they are weak, but because they are unlike any species in the galaxy. Their strength lies in courage, in intelligence, and in the refusal to surrender. The chamber remained silent. Delegates exchanged uneasy glances, some bowing their heads in respect, others gripping their desks in disbelief. The arrogance and mockery that had filled the room before had vanished completely. For the first time, every delegate understood the truth. Rin allowed himself a quiet sigh of relief. The council had finally seen what he had known for years. Humans were not fragile or foolish. They were clever, resourceful, and unstoppable when cornered. Their spirit was unmatched, and their actions would be remembered by the galaxy forever. The archivists prepared the final recording. The chamber waited, tense and quiet, knowing that what they were about to see would complete the story of humans' courage and strength. No one spoke. No one moved. The room was completely silent, waiting for the last proof of what made humans extraordinary. The chamber was filled with tension. Delegates had watched humans survive battles that seemed impossible, fight against enemies far larger and stronger, and adapt in ways no other species could. Now, the final recording began, promising the last piece of evidence that would leave the council stunned. The scene opened on a human colony deep in space. Alien forces had invaded without warning, attacking with overwhelming strength. The colony was not prepared for the assault, yet the humans moved with purpose. Civilians helped each other flee to safe zones. Engineers rigged defenses from spare parts. Soldiers formed lines, holding choke points and guiding the enemy into traps. Delegates leaned forward, eyes wide. Even those who had watched the previous recordings in disbelief could not look away. The humans seemed calm, focused, and united despite the chaos around them. A young human officer spoke quietly to a group of defenders. We hold together. We protect what we can. Do not stop. Do not fear. Every life saved is a victory. Move quickly and watch each other's backs. The camera followed a small team of humans as they ran across an open street to rescue civilians trapped by debris. Blaster fire rained down, yet they moved swiftly and decisively, shielding those in danger. Nearby, another group created a barricade using debris and machinery, slowing the enemy advance. Each action was brave, calculated, and effective. Delegates whispered among themselves, their earlier arrogance replaced with awe. The taller-winged delegate muttered, "They are ordinary in appearance, yet they act as if they are unstoppable." The recording shifted to show a wider view. Humans were scattered across the colony, defending key areas and rescuing the wounded. They coordinated with precision, using traps, diversions, and clever tactics to confuse the enemy. Engineers repaired damaged equipment while under fire. Civilians carried supplies and helped move the injured. Even children acted as scouts, warning of enemy movements. Every human contributed, and every human survived through courage and ingenuity. The aliens advanced in waves, confident that their superior numbers and technology would overwhelm the humans. Yet time and again, the humans adapted. They used narrow streets, ruined buildings, and natural terrain to their advantage. Each trap slowed the enemy. Each strike disrupted their plans. The humans' refusal to surrender forced the alien forces to retreat repeatedly. Rin watched the chamber carefully. The delegates were no longer whispering. Their expressions were tense, their eyes wide with disbelief and respect. The high speaker did not speak yet. The room was completely still, all attention on the hollow projection. One scene showed the human commander standing on a ridge, surveying the battlefield. Smoke filled the sky, flames burned across the colony, yet the humans held their positions. The commander's voice was calm as he directed others. Do not give in. We fight together. We hold our ground. We protect each other. Delegates could see the results. Human ingenuity and courage turned near certain defeat into survival and small victories. Enemy forces began to withdraw, confused and frustrated. The humans had suffered losses, yet they had not surrendered. Their determination and teamwork had allowed them to survive and defend what mattered. A Drek warrior shook his head slowly. I underestimated them. I see now why the ban exists. They are unlike any species I have encountered. The Talar delegate whispered, they do not fear. They do not give up. Even when all seems lost, they find a way. The high speaker finally raised his staff. His voice echoed across the chamber. You have seen the humans' courage, intelligence, and perseverance. You have seen how they survive when others fall. You have seen how they protect one another and adapt to every danger. The ban was not placed out of fear alone. It exists because humans are unique. They are relentless when challenged, and their will cannot be broken. The chamber was silent. Delegates stared at one another, realizing they had been wrong to mock the ban. Respect had replaced arrogance, and unease had replaced confidence. For the first time, the council understood that humans were extraordinary. Ren stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. The humans do not seek war. They do not seek conquest. Yet when threatened, they fight to protect themselves and those they care about. They endure, they adapt, and they survive. Do not mistake their absence for weakness. Remember this lesson well. No one spoke. The weight of the message sank in. The humans had left a quiet warning for the galaxy, they were not to be underestimated, and underestimating them could be fatal. The final images faded. Humans were shown tending to the wounded, rebuilding their defenses, and preparing for the next challenge. Their strength was not only in battle, but in spirit, courage, and intelligence. The council had witnessed it all. The chamber remained silent long after the projector shut down. Delegates who had mocked the ban before now sat in thoughtful silence. The high speaker lowered his staff and spoke softly. This is why humans are banned. Not because they are the largest or the strongest, but because they will not yield. And they will not lose alone. Let all of you remember this. Rin allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. The council had finally understood. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed for so long, had left a message the galaxy could never ignore. The laughter, the mockery, and the arrogance had been replaced with awe, respect, and a quiet fear of what humans could do when truly tested. For the first time, the delegates realized that the ban was not punishment, but protection for both humans and the rest of the galaxy. The humans had proven that their strength lay not in numbers or weapons, but in their courage, intelligence, and unbreakable will. The room remained quiet, the lesson of humanity etched in every mind.